If I was to ask you, what are you passionate about? How would you respond? For me, no doubt about it, it is the Down to Business podcast. But whether you're a business owner, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're none of the above, we all have something or some things that we love. For Cash, we take data analytics, we take engineering, we take computer science, we take sports, and we put all of that together. And what do you get? I don't want to spoil too much before the episode gets started, but I do want to let you know that you will be taken on a journey here from start to finish, from the sacrifice to the trial and error, to what happens on the front end, to what happens on the back end, to even things that we don't see. I was really going to throw everything off and name this episode Mass Tort Litigation, and if you stick around long enough, you'll see why. But all in all, Cash strives to provide the best user experience possible, as any business owner or entrepreneur or creator should do. So without further ado, enjoy episode 226, Crunch the Numbers. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Down to Business podcast. Look, I show enthusiasm. I'm very excited about all my episodes, but this one hits a little bit differently, man. I definitely got to shout out Cash, as I call him. His first name is Brian, but that's how I met him, as Cash. But very just hospitable, very intelligent, very funny brother, man. I can really speak to a lot of just the experiences that I had with him, but really just, I met him when I was in grad school. I went up to Syracuse, upstate New York, and shout out to the Kappa chapter, man, really just, making me feel there's no place like home for sure. So definitely welcome me with open arms, man. Was able to meet a lot of great individuals and was able to stay connected with them even after my journey back in 2019. So to now have Cash here on the podcast, to now really hear what he's doing, see what he's doing, have been following along since he started, but also just for the futuristic mindset that he has, really where he's thinking and really what he's trying to move towards. And I know a lot of the people tapping in I feel like this episode originally it could relate to the fellas, but ladies be tapping in, y'all be doing the same thing. So I ain't about to, I'm not even about to sway one way or the other. But before we get into all things, before I let him just take over and let y'all know why he's here today, Brian, how you doing today, bro? How's everything on your end?
I'm good, man. I'm honored to be invited. I'm feeling good. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. I'm gonna just call him Cash, y'all, because that didn't really feel right for me saying so I'm gonna just call him Cash.
I was gonna just put Cash for the display name, but I'm like, I'll put Brian Cash for those who don't know me.
You never know who's coming across this one.
Exactly.
All right, so I know we have a lot of mutual connections just between the Qs, just between Syracuse, just between some of the networks and mutuals that we may have met along the way. But I know we're going to have some people tapping in from your side. We're going to have some people on my side. We're also going to have some newcomers. So as we spoke about, people just finding out about this, finding out about one of us in some capacity. So for everybody out there, though, to bring everybody up to speed, to put everybody on the same page, just do two things for me. One, tell me a little bit about yourself. And then two, just tell me what brings you on the Down to Business podcast today.
Absolutely. So hello, everybody. Brian Cash. I'm from Queens, New York. Growing up, I love to play sports, no matter the weather conditions, right? Hail, rains, snow, sunny, no matter what it was, I was outside playing basketball, football, baseball with my friends. When my hoop dreams, I'm not going to say faded, but once I knew I wasn't making the league, right? I was like, what's the next thing I'm going to do in my life? So my family, very Southern background, right? You got to be an engineer. You got to be a dentist, right? I was like, I want to be in sport management. No, you got to be STEM, physics, whatever you want to do with it. So I was like, all right, how do I blend sports and engineering, actually? So before data engineering, before data science, before any of this was a hot topic, before it was a buzzword, I was onto it. So what got me into it was really two things. So growing up, I used to be very fascinated by the statistics you will see on TV. Here's how LeBron James performs when Savannah's in attendance versus when she's not in attendance. And I'll be like, how do they know this so fast? It will really fascinate me, right? And then I was in a class, was it 7th or 8th grade? But it was a strategy class where we did chess, we did poker, but we also did fantasy baseball. We did a March Madness bracket, and I actually predicted the Final Four correctly my first time. But in my credit, it was the year all the number 1 seeds went, so it wasn't too special. It was like the Memphis, Kansas that year. But I would spend over, no exaggeration, over 8 hours just researching who will win these games for round 1. Then I'll spend another 8 hours for round 2. And same for fantasy baseball. Just to set my lineup, I'm spending 1 to 2 hours just looking at statistics on who's like the best player for this specific game. So when I was really saying, all right, if I'm going to go into the engineering route, how can I do something that I appreciate? I wanted to be the person behind the statistics of how does LeBron James perform when Savannah's in attendance. So I always thought I'll be working for ESPN after. After my freshman year, I actually almost quit computer science because the thing about computer science is let's use dance for an example, right? If I was a dance major, that doesn't mean I danced for the first time once I got to college. Usually I'm a dancer before I got to college, and then colleges will polish me. I never programmed a day in my life before college. So when I got there, I was way behind the curve. A lot of my peers were ahead of me. I just didn't feel like I belonged, not on the sense of I knew I could do it, but I knew I was extremely behind. So going into sophomore year, I was like, okay, what am I gonna? Maybe I should just not tell my family. Maybe I should just switch my major. But one of my professors reached out to me for a TA position for data structures and algorithms, and it's because I did well in the class, not because I knew I was so good at it, but just because I knew how to answer a homework assignment, right? So I was like, all right. He was paying $22 an hour. And I'm like, $22 an hour in college, that's some money right there. So I was saying, all right, I really want this $22 an hour, but I got to stick with computer science in order to do that. But if I was to be a TA, I didn't want to embarrass myself and go teaching something that I really didn't understand. So I started grinding really to just make sure I understood what I needed to know to teach that class. And in doing that, I really got equipped with what I needed to know for computer science. So when I graduated, got blessed with some very, very great roles, auditing the Volkswagen emission scandal, the endo-transvaginal mesh settlement, the Bosch settlement, which created a cheap device for Volkswagen, then worked for the Washington Post, some government initiatives, and did some insurance work. But in doing all of that, I never still worked in sports. So when I look back at it, and we could talk more about it during the interview, I wanted to be full circle with really bringing sports and technology together, and that goes into the app that we'll talk about soon.
Bro, so all right, so I got to point something out. Y'all see how he just gave the whole bio, like he was kind of giving details to things, but when it came to his accolades, he just zoomed through. I'm like, wait, hold on, bro. What you just say you did, or what you act like, So, but no, I resonate with a lot of what you said. One, I should have been a TA in college just because I was making $7.57. I think we got a quarter raise like every semester or something like that, whatever the case.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, like I understand that from the perspective of the expectations that can be placed upon you, especially from parents and things like that. I was a first generation college student. My mom dropped out when she became pregnant with me. My dad was military. So it was just like, as a first gen, there are still expectations on you. There are still people who want you to go a certain path or consider certain things or do this or do that to fit to that standard. Even on one of my the episode that was just published with Shatay, it was more so just about, how this was she was thrown into this at an early age. And it was just, it was just expected of her with each year of her life, elementary, middle, high, college, to really just kind of continue in that. But oftentimes, and especially with kind of our generation, like, we are the ones that kind of break that cycle, break that chain, kind of want to do something different, build a foundation. But as you said, it wasn't necessarily that you wanted to just go completely AWOL. It was more so, hey, I like what I'm doing here. I really love this. Why can't I just enjoy the two together? Exactly. But it also takes those realizations. It also takes getting in certain places, in certain spaces, and maybe realizing that my brother was a comp sci major. He's going into his junior year now. He is not a comp sci major anymore. So he was also similar to you. He had done some practice coding and things like that, but he never really sat down and like got in his bag. And Makai, if you're listening to this episode, and if you did, let me know. You can check me, bro. But I was watching, my brother, and you was here, and you was better than me. I couldn't do nothing. So that was what it was. But no, for him, it really became a thing of when he got there and he realized. I think he really realized. Like, we never had to sit down conversation, but I think it was he saw where people were, he saw where he was, and he felt like there was just kind of a divide and a disconnect there, just the same. But more so, what I wanted to focus on too was towards the end of what you said. So now, as you kind of work through everything, as you got the TA position, as you kind of started to immerse yourself more into this, and then even coming after it, and some of the projects and some of the initiatives and even some of the places and recognition that you were able to get, would you say that you, upon graduating, upon amassing all the success and accumulating all the success, were you just all gung-ho on this? Was sports really still kind of on that back burner? You still knew that you wanted to do something with it, but you didn't necessarily know where you kind of wanted to go? Wait, hold on. Actually, before you answer that, bro, I'm so glad you said something about the weird stats. Bro, I was talking to my man's probably like a month or so ago. I said, bro, whose job is it to sit here and just calculate some of these things, bro? Like, how do you know how many touchdowns he throws in 37-degree weather versus somebody's job to just have, bro, going to Syracuse, obviously the sports are so prominent there, but I was just sometimes at some of the stuff they would say, I'm like, yo, somebody really sat down and took their time and pulled that information. But it was interesting to me because I'm a numbers guy. So for me, it was just like, wow, there's percentages and all of that. But so I had to point that out because I'm not the only person that was like, why it sounds kind of weird. And why you read certain things on TV, like, come on, how did you really come up with that? It's still just like, nah, how did you really come up with that though? Like, what did you really do? So to hear all your analytics with that, to hear the analyzing behind things, It's kind of dope. But yeah, for you. So now moving forward, you done graduated, you done been a part of these initiatives and everything, and you done got the recognition and everything. Where was sports really on your mind with, because at this point, it sounds like you were pretty skilled in what you were doing. You were able to kind of get into some dope things and make probably some great connections and even probably move yourself forward. So what was your trajectory with sports at this point in time?
Yeah, so there's a few answers to that. So graduating, I wanted to work for ESPN, right? And I applied to ESPN and I didn't get the job. And what's crazy is they reached out to me. I don't know the exact year. I'm going to say 2020, 2021. I left it on red, right? But the thing, but yeah, no, I wanted to work for ESPN initially, but starting off, I was happy to really get, I'm not going to say any job, because actually coming out of school, and this isn't answering your question, but I'm going to get back to your question. Coming out of school, I actually declined a lot of jobs because IT is very stereotypical, where your next role is going to really be based off of your last role, right? So I didn't want to take certain jobs where it was going to define my trajectory, where I knew what I was capable of, because I had an uncle in computer science teaching me a lot of game. But if I took a certain position, it was like, you're not going to design this database for me. You're not going to do this for me. You was just the tester at your last role, right? So I took a big sacrifice, and I actually worked for my uncle for a year for free, where he was doing a equity crowdfunding portal. Nothing with sports, right? But it kind of taught me the ins and outs of computer science, really. And it was the biggest blessing and the curse. Like, I learned a lot from a computer science level, but he always said he wasn't happy with what I knew. So he said, you pledged Omega Psi Phi. Well, I'm gonna make you pledge computer science, right? He's like, you're not gonna get a hot meal unless you program this. I had 2 hot meals a week. I'm like, bro, what is going on over here? So I had to escape that situation, and escaping that, I didn't really care to work for sports at that moment. I just wanted a job to really support myself. So in that first role, that's where I mentioned the Volkswagen emission scandal. It was mass tort litigation. I never even heard of mass tort litigation until I worked for it, and I never really even heard of it unless I'm talking about it, right? But at this point in my career, I really just wanted to get roles that define who I was as a professional, where once I went on and started my own journey, I had something to speak to, where somebody could listen to me and say, oh no, yeah, he knows about technology, right? So I wasn't really focused on sports on that side, but I did always have data pipelines in the background for, like, if I was to try to bet on something, or if I was to really just try to predict who was going to get a hit on MLB Beat the Streak, which is a free platform, right? I had those numbers in front of me, but I was only a data person. I didn't have any front end experience. I didn't have like any infrastructure experience to put everything together in the end. So that was something that I was just using standalone. And then over time, once I gained more skills throughout the years, I realized what I'm doing as a standalone could really be commercialized. And then for some other projects that I actually want to work on that I think are way bigger, I don't want to do something big for the first time. So I'd rather do it with something that I know and really appreciate, where it's still it's still scrutiny behind it, because if I have users, I got to make sure whatever I'm putting in front of them is, as perfect as can be. But it's still less scrutiny behind what I think could be $1 million, billion-dollar idea, where if I mess up there's no coming back from it, right? So I wanted to launch a sports platform that, once I felt I had all the skills to put it together, but then knowing what I have in the future going on for me.
And I like that double whammy, almost like you kind of cut out, in a sense, having to outsource a little bit, because one, your passion was with sports, and you can kind of still do the structuring of things, the formatting of things. Granted, you probably still had to maybe do some research, learn some things, and do everything like that. But you kind of had both skill sets under your belt. So it was kind of, just a matter of just continuously merging them and just diligent and consistent. So something I also want to kind of touch on is that biggest blessing and a curse, as you called it, to leave and to have an abundance of jobs to decline is a blessing. I got out of grad school and I, Newhouse Mafia, as they call it, and nothing against Newhouse, but I kind of got out and I thought, I didn't think I was your next Mike Tirico or nothing like that. But I said, okay, with this backing behind me, the #1 school in the nation, this should look pretty good on the resume. Man, I was going through my Gmail last year and just cleaning out my entire inbox. And I got to all those, I got back to 2019 when I was applying to all them jobs. And just to see some of the things that I was applying, ESPN was heavy in there for sure, because I wanted to to be right there with you, you know. But it was just like, you know, to see really that's a humbling process, the job application process in itself. So to really see you on the other side of that, but really having to, you know, because that probably was not the easiest thing. You know, it's tough trying to do that, but it's very, I think you made a great point. And for those people who are not in IT like myself, I didn't realize that, you know, it's stereotypical like that they're kind of looking at what you were doing previously and they'll judge that to as kind of where they want to bring you, you know. But I also, now that I think about it, they'll do that with a lot of different jobs across the different industries, but that'll also have to tailor where you go. And with IT, you know, it can be very specific, very niche. So to have a niche in this, but want to kind of get into this, but be kind of slighted because of what you did is different. But okay, making the sacrifice and the decision to work with your uncle, how did you feel going through it? Like, was it points where you were just like, man, I'm not doing this. I need the money. I need whatever, you know, he's doing too much. Was it really just, you know, you continue to remain a sponge and a student of the game? Was it kind of a culmination of both? What was really those 12 months like for you?
Yeah. So it was a process, to say the least. Now, the thing going into it is I never had money before that experience. So I was able to really, you know, it's hard to know what you're missing out on when you never experienced that, right? So yeah, it was tough, but looking back at it, it sounds even crazier, right? It's $0 in your pocket, pretty much, probably $500 in credit card lines that you could spend, really just being reliant on somebody. It was very tough, but at the time, I didn't really know much better, as crazy as it sounds. So I was kind of able to fight through it.
Gotcha. And I'm sure for him, that's like one of them things where it was probably eye-opening, you know, for him to have his nephew like that, but one just to be able to kind of have a student or have somebody that you could kind of delegate to or pass off certain things to or kind of, you know, pass that along to. So, all right, so now fast forward a little bit, you know, teased and touched on it a little bit. So I want to kind of debut it and bring it up. So the app itself, the platform, that's a lot of work. You know, it's not the easiest thing. You know, I've talked to developers. I've talked to people who want to make their own app and don't have a lick or a clue as to what to do. And I've talked to people who make apps. So for you, would you say that now that you're kind of in it and moving through it and grooving through it, would you say that you felt prepared for what was to come, prepared for the journey that you were embarking on?
Absolutely.
Know that? Okay. So you felt like, you know, with your knowledge of the field, your knowledge of kind of what goes into an app, what goes into building a platform, you didn't feel kind of overwhelmed, or you didn't feel like you needed to kind of do a little bit extra, or you slighted or anything like that going in and building your platform?
Not really. I think I started at the right time. So when I started working, I knew what I specialized in and I knew what I didn't specialize in. I didn't specialize in front-end development. I didn't specialize in infrastructure, but we're in the wave of ChatGPT and AI that can help us so much. So I understood the concepts behind everything. So I was like, all right, what I'm going to focus on is getting the data is the most important thing behind the application. You know, when I first built this, the front end looked horrendous. But I got something out there. The infrastructure part of it wasn't as stable as it should have been, but I got something out there. But then I was able to kind of build on top of that. But having AI as an assistant, before, there were things that legitimately you would have had to hire 3 different people, one for what I'm doing, one for the front end, one for infrastructure, and maybe 2 people for each cohort, just because it's extremely complicated. And now you have that assistant by your side. So if I was doing this last year, or really any other year besides this year, I wouldn't have been prepared for it. But all the shout out to artificial intelligence. You still have to know how to use it, of course, right? Because you can't just put anything out there. You still have to know how to prompt it and really like assess what's being told to you. But knowing what I knew in March when I quit my job and starting this process, it wasn't too much of a challenge.
Timing is everything, but I love that emphasis that you placed on still knowing what to do, still knowing how to prompt it. I work on the side with a company about training AI models and prompting them. And, you know, a few of the people who I've even spoken with on the podcast that are heavily into AI now, and they even use it for their business to kind of automate things, they've always told me that, you know, this fear mongering around AI, or kind of this threat per se, is only because of it. If we ever allow AI to take over or do things that it's not supposed to do, we have nobody to blame but ourselves. You know, we're the ones prompting and training. And it's so interesting, you know, when I was working with this job, you know, as people just hold the Bards and the ChatGPTs and your Geminis and everything in such high regard, but they're not perfect. They're not foolproof. I have trained some of these models, and it's just like somebody's asking you a simple prompt, and you'll give a link or you'll say something that's factually correct, but it's not all the way through. And if you don't fact check that, or if you do that, it'll continuously adopt wrong information, misinformation, false things. So it's all about, as you said, how you train it, how you prompt it. But as you said, that divine timing, that just kind of last year it could have looked totally different versus this year. And even this year, you necessarily didn't have everything together, but you still were very much comfortable enough to get something out there, to put it out there and then make adjustments and go from there.
Exactly.
Now, the app itself, what do you specialize in? What are people who are coming across this platform, who are getting on here, who are interested? Because we have a lot of sports lovers here, so what can people expect with diving into this? Is this more from a statistical side of things? Are they going to be able to make money from this? Are they going to be able to learn from this? Is it everything? What is it? Give us a breakdown of that.
Absolutely. So it's two things to the app. So when I built this app, I didn't actually know what else was on the market. So I was saying, all right, how do I bring predictions to the market? And how can I make people feel comfortable in these predictions? So at first, it started off as just a prediction company where for each game, for the NBA, for WNBA, for baseball, and for football, for every game, I have predictions for each player and for each game, right? And that's all it was. But the thing is, how do I trust really what's behind your predictions? So what I started off doing was having these like visualizations where I'll say, okay, Vegas has this player at 18.5 points. My prediction is at 18.67. Something like that I wouldn't bet on because that's gambling. I don't know what side it will go on. But then I start looking at all these other players and I actually see the projections extremely close to each other as well. I'm like, okay, but that alone is really to give faith that the way he's calculating data is the same way Vegas is calculating the data. But then what you try to look for is the outliers, right? Where there's a gap. And where there's a gap, then I add additional metrics really at your fingertips to see why there is that gap. And is it something that you should trust? So that's what I have initially. But the thing is, that's already on the market. And I didn't even realize that. So I'm saying, okay, how can I be different? So I saw a post on Twitter. Somebody had asked, I want to know the amount of days that Ohtani and Aaron Judge hit a home run on the same day. And surprisingly, there was not one platform out here that provided that. So I was like, oh, okay, like something like that's so simple to me. But I saw that and I jumped right on it. 3 hours later, it was on the website. But then I realized the traction that was coming behind that. So I started doing a lot of other niche reports that don't exist on the market. So for example, for baseball, which was when I launched this, baseball was the key sport that was in season. People don't like, what I realized is people don't actually like safe bets. They don't like to bet on, the Falcons and the Buccaneers are both going to score over 13.5 points where, the odds aren't really in your favor, but you could really just add your money up real quick, right? They don't like to bet on that. They like who's going to score a touchdown, who's going to hit a home run, how do I make where I can put $10 turn into 20,000 right now, So a lot of people like to bet on home runs for that reason. So I started putting out a niche report, which I call home run drought data, right? So there's no method of really how to predict a home run, but a lot of people like to see who is due, right? And I saw in a bunch of comments, this player is about to hit a home run because he's due. But so I created a report. This player has, what's the average amount of games between when a player hits a home run? How many games have they not hit a home run in right now? What's their longest drought? And I post that for every player where their current drought is right next to their average drought. And that alone, when I started, what's it now? It's the beginning of October. Yeah. So the very beginning of August, I didn't even have 100 followers and that on Twitter. And now I'm pretty much at 1,100 right now. And that's over 2 months. But that was just really off of that report alone where people was gaining the traction to it. So now that baseball season's dying down, I want to keep that momentum going into the NFL and NBA and WNBA while it's still going on, of course, too. So I'm saying, all right, what's the niche reports that I can provide people where I already explained what I initially had on the platform, which other people have, but how can I add other information on top of what I already have? That way I'm given an additional edge where why go to this platform when I could literally have everything that I need at my fingertips right here. So
it's all about that niche, man. And it's so, I'm so glad that you touched on that because it's a commonality across a lot of the interviewees that I speak with. I always want to know that why, that what happened, that what was that aha moment? When did that light bulb go off? Why did you kind of want to do what you wanted to do? And 9 times out of, not even 9 times out of 10, it's a good majority of the times that it really started because you wanted to dare to be different in a little bit, or you saw a problem. It may not have necessarily been your problem, but you saw that there was a problem out there, that there wasn't an immediate just click solution, so for that way you decided to then get into all of that. Because another kind of question that I was going to roll into, or another thought that I was going to roll into, and you touched on it a little bit, but I would love to kind of hear if you have any more to expound on, is that did you feel coming into this industry it was oversaturated. It was too much going on. There was not a lot of value being provided because, we can talk about your prize picks, your FanDuels, your Hard Rock bets, we can run down the list of all of these different things, or even a lot of the people who do their own things on the side, or these smaller companies, or just if you type it in Twitter, Google, anything like that, you'll yield a ton of different results. So did you feel that coming into this industry that you were already kind of behind some sort of 8 ball, or you had to kind of catch up and adapt? Or did you feel like because of how specific you were trying to get, or because of what you wanted to highlight and touch on, that it separated you from the beginning?
So 2 answers to that. So going into it, I didn't feel like I was behind, but your algorithm is tailored to what you put out, right? So I saw sport content, but I saw it more from, look at this crazy shot that was made yesterday, not from all of the just really sport betting Twitter. Once I started putting out the content that I was putting out, my algorithm, of course, got tailored to all of the cappers, which is like a terminology for the people that give you picks on Twitter, and really all of the other sport technologies. And I realized how much is on the market. And the thing about it, there's some great work that's put out there, right? So who said it? I think it was, I can't remember who said it. I think it was Shannon Sharp. It might have not been him, but I don't have to see other people fail for me to succeed, right? So I don't mind all of the other stuff being out there. It just drives me to say, how can I be different? And the biggest reason why I built this was, one, is what brought me into technology. So I personally just loved doing it, besides really how successful it became as a business, right? Of course, being successful is always a great thing, but I personally just love providing this and this analysis for different sports, because this is what brought me into the field in the first place. But second, as I mentioned, I'm working on another platform, and I don't like to do things big for the first time. So I wanted to really, it's not just the technology part behind it, is the social media aspect. My respect for social media managers after doing this went through the roof. Before, I was like, you get paid to be on social media. It's like you have to know exactly when this page posts something, this is where all your potential followers may be. You got to post the exact second there, right? Or here's another page where everybody is following. You got to get your content out there. Really just like being on top of the social media game, being on type of how to really price your app, what users gravitate to, why will they use your application, really all those business operations I never did before. So really doing this is something that I love to do, but it's also teaching me as I'm going along the way.
And you have to forever remain a student of the game, no matter what you're doing, even if you're the expert, because there's something out there. There's a new problem out there. You're going to come across maybe another tweet or another post that may give you another idea, or may have you want to roll out something different. So I love to hear that, because I approached it the same way with my podcast, and I didn't even necessarily realize it in a sense. Sometimes you're you. So it's not really about, the outside noise is there. And that's really what it is. It's just noise. You don't really gravitate towards it. That doesn't really affect you or sway you one way or another, because I tell people, I use this example so much. The original name for this podcast was going to be Back to Business. I've had people come to me and basically say that they wanted to start podcasts kind of similar. They wanted to start podcasts just in general. They wanted to start business podcasts and everything like that, but they don't want to feel like they're stepping on any toes. And, I kind of laugh with it, just because not laugh disrespectfully, but laugh because if I were even to allow you to, if I was to make myself feel like you stepped on my toes, then that's me. That's all my fault. That's selfish on my behalf. If I feel threatened or anything like that, then that means I'm not in this for the right reasons or whatever. I tell people look, you can literally start the podcast. It can be B2B instead of D2B. D2B is still going to be what we be. We're still going to do what we do. You're still, and I'm going to support you every step of the way. For me, I know what I bring to the show. I know what I bring to the table. I know what my interviews are. I know how the content is and everything like that. I've studied this. I've been public speaking since middle high school, so for me, it's a totally different ball game with that. But when you recognize that, and to me, it doesn't really matter. There's not an industry that there are probably some very niche industries out there, but a lot of what people want to get into, whether it be retail, whether it be fast food, whether it be anything. You think about even the big competitors. Wendy's is not really worried about McDonald's. They're not worried about Chick-fil-A. Yes, they're going to have competition in those shade, but they know at the end of the day, they're all going to be successful. Exactly. They all have their own niches. They all have they're known for what they're known for, but they have their audience and their crowd specifically. But I love that you said that you gained that newfound appreciation for social media because it's tough out here, man. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard being a content creator, man, especially a one man or one woman band, man. It's rough. And, as recently I started a CMO position back in May. So I've even kind of given myself the challenge of building another platform from scratch in a sense. And that's very tough, and especially in an industry that you may not be the most versed in. So I'm educating on top of just implementing what I did, but also kind of using that, because I can't use everything that I use to build the podcast from a health and wellness perspective. I have to kind of be able to differentiate that audience and still appeal. All right. So NBA, NFL, WNBA, MLB. Why? Personal preference, popularity, the most kind of traction. Why?
I played basketball growing up. I played basketball and baseball growing up. And I watched football. I never really played football. I played football in the park, but I never played at like a high school level or anything. So as I mentioned, the biggest thing about what I provide is data and predictions, right? And in order to provide what people want, you really have to understand what people want, right? So for hockey, I never played hockey. I watch hockey occasionally, but I couldn't even tell you what's like an offsides really in hockey. It's just not my forte. So to be able to put something out there, I have too much pride in what I'm putting out. So I don't want somebody to pay for something like, oh, I saw what he did for baseball. I really like his work. All right, I'm gonna pay for hockey now. And then I have the worst predictions ever. And it's just because I was trying to put a cash grab out there saying, all right, I'm gonna include hockey too. So it's really just what I knew from a subject level. I knew football really well. I know baseball really well. I know basketball really well. I said, let me start with this. I don't really know soccer. I don't know hockey too well. It was just one of those things where, of course, if I continue to grow and I have a team and I have some subject experts, add it to the platform immediately. But I wanted to start with what I felt comfortable in.
Absolutely. And you already kind of answered my next question. So I love that because that was kind of what I was going to roll into too. But something that I also think about too as a person who likes to make safe bets and predictions myself, they're not always accurate. You lose sometimes. And sometimes you go on dry spells and streaks where it's just, you felt like you were, even sometimes when you try to dumb things down a little bit and not go your 5s to 7,800, you just want a 5 to maybe 30 and you're just not hitting, or that one player or one team.
Exactly.
It's all fun and dandy. It's all fine when we're winning, when we're up, when money is being made, when things are correct. But those dry spells, those L's, losses or lessons, whatever you want to call them, it's tough. And especially tough when, as you said, people are paying for things, people are expecting things, people, the minute that people put money towards things or put their faith in other things, they forget that person is a human being just the same. They just want what they want when they want it. So I don't really know where along this journey you are right now, but I'll kind of ask it futuristically. But if you have experience with this, just let me know. But how are you prepared to deal with those times and those spells where, things may not be going the way that everybody wants it to go? Not to say that it's just terrible, but you can't please everybody. We'll
absolutely. So everybody wants to make money, right? And what you asked is, it was kind of my plan in going into this. So I didn't want to be the person providing picks, right? Because as you mentioned, everything is great when things are going well, but you could win somebody money for 9 straight months and then lose the money for 1 month. And they like, you suck. You lost me all of my money. I trusted you too much, right? And I didn't want to have that guilty conscience. So what I wanted to do was, I could provide the data. I could give you all of those metrics at your fingertips the same way. And as I mentioned before, if I could give you the confidence that the way I'm predicting it is very similar to the way Vegas is predicting it, but then I give you so many metrics at your fingertips, it's like any other business. If I was to think about insurance, right? Why would I insure your house in Florida? I don't know, but if you give me 5 million metrics by my fingertips to explain why I might insure you, it may make sense, right? And of course, I can still lose my money, but then I can also win my money. So nothing's really a safe bet, whether it's stocks, whether it's insurance, whether it's sports betting. But if you're just doing it off of vibes, right, that's how they stay in business. But when you have extra information at your fingertips, nothing's guaranteed, but you're giving yourself a bigger edge to win over somebody else. So
I like the way you put it.
And I wanted to be that person that give that data rather than saying, here's the pick you want to make. I can't, if somebody says, all right, you said these 15 teams are going to win and 13 out of 15 of them hit, you suck. That's not my fault. You know what I mean? You gotta be smart of how you place your bets, but I can at least give all the information.
Understood. I can put it at your disposal. I can lead you to the water, whatever you decide to do from there.
Exactly.
Hey, I love that. I love when you get to that point where you can just throw your hands up. The responsibility is no longer mine.
Exactly. Was the data wrong? Tell me if the data was wrong.
Okay, so you touched on the team too, and you touched on at some point, hopefully being able to, come across maybe different subject matter experts or just different people who may be versed in different areas that are not your strong suits in particularly. So as someone who has such a multitude of knowledge in this field and such a passion for it, and even so much so, you spend hours at it. You said you were spending 8 hours around during March Madness. You said you were spending 3 hours just on Ohtani and Judge. So I know that you are doing your due diligence. You are remaining a student. What does it look like for you when it comes to building out a team, though? Because as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, it's not the easiest thing to allow people into your vision, into your passion project, into something that even you're funding, you're losing sleep over, everything like that. So what does that look like for you from a consideration perspective? Is it something that's kind of on the forefront of the mind? Or are you kind of just more so just trying to lay down the foundation for what you have here and you'll kind of worry about that at a later date? Or is it something that, you kind of want to roll out sooner rather than later?
For my next project, I plan on, of course, I need to have a team around me. And my biggest thing is what you learn most, what you kind of notice, but what you know really once you start going into the entrepreneur route is not many people care about what you're doing, right? Unless you're really providing them the value. What can you do for me? They don't care. They will support you, but how do you get outside of your friend group and your family group to say, here's how I support you? So if I was to build a team around me, it's not about, okay, here's how much I could pay you. Do you really believe in a vision, and do you really have the passion of what I'm building the same way, right? Because if not, your heart's not really in the game, of course. And people will do good work if they're getting paid. I'm not going to say you're not, right? I've had a few jobs I didn't really care about where I put some good work out there, right? But that said, if that's what I would look for if I was building a team, not somebody that's just there for, here's how I can support my living, which is very important, but really cares about what you're building as well.
I love that. It's because at the end of the day, the money is not going to keep you somewhere there where you don't want to be kept. You know what I mean? Even all that we've watched people give up 6-figure jobs and step away and step down and do this and do that. So it has to go more than that. It also it's a testament to that character too, but it's also a testament to who you are as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. Who you want around you, that like-minded. Because as I said, I'll be 5 years probably after this episode is aired, and it's just like, have I thought about building a team? Have I wanted to bring people in? Have I wanted to automate and do all of that? Yeah, absolutely. But for me, it's also just like, why are you stepping into this realm? Are you stepping into this realm because you genuinely love it, you follow it, you can resonate with it, you want the money from it, you want the benefits from it, or you truly want to just be able to see this thing scale and grow? So I'm very glad that you kind of you framed it that way, and that's the mindset that you have as you look to kind of build and scale. Now, with the trajectory of this industry, is there anything that, you're worried about, you're concerned about? Is there anything that kind of, because with this industry, with any industry, with just being a business owner and an entrepreneur, you always have to stay up to date with things, whether it be through news, through Reddit, through social media, through all of those, word of mouth, everything of the sort like that. So with this side of things, because as you said, I don't want people to just go gung-ho that this is just sports betting. This is a Prize Picks Junior or something like that. No, these are predictions. This is data. This is analytics. These are facts, and I'm just going like that afterwards. So is there anything that's kind of, I'm not even going to use necessarily the words like anxious or uneasy, but is there anything that you kind of want to keep on the forefront with what you're kind of in and what you're immersing yourself in as you continue to move forward?
Well, so the first thing is I use my platform, right? So if I was to lose money, of course, I'm going to try to make it better, right? I'm not just putting something out there and just running away like, all right, here's everybody. In order for me, want to know that things are truly working and that it is what it should be, I got to use it as well, right? And if I'm losing my own money, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it better where I'm not losing my money. So that's the first thing. But outside of that, really, when you ask the question, is there anything I'm worried about? Not with the sport betting application, but initially going into this journey, yes, I was. So when I bring up my uncle's situation, it's really two things I got from it. One was the great computer science background, but two was the mindset that I never wanted to be reliant on anybody, right? Because being reliant on anybody, you don't know the situation you'll be in, you don't know how they're going to act. It's really out of your control, right? So in working corporate, you can get a nice paying job, and feel that you're not relying on somebody, but you're still relying on that job, right? And sometimes it might not even be bad performance. It could be external factors. If you work for an insurance company, which I did, a big hurricane wipes out so much profit, they just got to lay off people, right? It's really out of your hands. How can you kind of take control of your own destiny? So at this point in my career, I felt like I was very specialized in data, which is cool. But sometimes there's so many boot camps out here for data specifically, but not for really true software engineers that understand data, that understand the front end, that understand infrastructure, that could really build a full platform that I built end to end and say, yeah, only I touched this, right? But if you was to ask me to build this really in March, I never did anything like it, right? So in order to kind of keep myself ahead of the market, I wanted to really invest in myself where regardless of what happens, this process here, everything is automated data pipeline. So I actually have a full scale application where I can take another corporate job if I wanted to and truly tell them there's no ongoing intervention where I need to like take my full time in maintaining this. I spent a lot of time taking care of the social media to get users, but that's because it's the only thing I'm focused on right now. But if I ever wanted to pivot, I have this as truly like a additional income where I really have to touch it because it's still automated pipelines. The data is still going to be the same. I'm not like waking up at 2 a.m. to press a button for the data to get there. It's all there for you, right? But in order to get there, I had when I was doing all this work for companies, I was making companies millions, saving companies millions. The question is, why am I not working for myself? And the only thing was I never spent the time behind it, and I never really had the resources behind me. And I'm like, okay, I can't answer one of those questions. I could give myself the time. I had enough saved up. And working on my bigger platform, I'm gonna need the resources behind me. But what's gonna make somebody want to invest in me? So, and I can tell them everything I've worked on, but before now, I couldn't show them what I've worked on. So really going on with this process is really like a resume builder, even though I appreciate it, because on the scale of like resume builder of if I was to take another corporate job or if I was to go on another bigger platform, anybody looking at me, they see what I'm about now. And that's kind of like a step I knew I needed to take. So going into it, I was very concerned, but I knew, there's no better risk than to invest in yourself. So that's what I embarked on.
He said end to end, y'all. I don't think y'all really hearing some of the things that it's that tech technology, it's that tech terminology, man. But y'all gotta look, man. It's as this without a doubt speaks for itself. You could easily go many places, and they would, even many of people that would probably pay top dollar for you to do what you did, your platform just for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
$500,000.
You didn't even need to bring in everybody else. This is all you touching it yourself, and you figured it out how to make it happen and make it work. So I love that, bro. So all right, now I want to kind of give people, like, I guess, a little bit of a glimpse into even some of the future too. So I know that as we spoke about, you have people in your network that are following along, supporting the journey. You have people that have embarked on the journey because of how you kind of promoted it or anything like that. So as you move forward now, what do you feel like is your biggest piece of marketing and promotion? Do you feel like social media will be your strongest asset? Do you feel like word of mouth? Do you feel like kind of getting this out there in different spaces and places, podcast appearances? Do you feel like everything together will really help? What are you kind of, or do you really have a direct marketing and a promotion focus? Or do you feel like kind of things can kind of speak for itself? As you said, as long as the results, as long as the data is there like that, look at the social media, look at the Twitter, like you said, how 2 months you flip that thing pretty good. So what do you feel like moving forward will be your biggest success point from a marketing perspective?
So word of mouth is always crucial in any business thriving, right? But to get to word of mouth, you got to get that initial base. So that's where the social media is coming in now. My goal is, I said I wanted to get 15,000 followers on Twitter before February, which is when I plan on releasing the next app. But the reason why is because I want to say, all right, I'll give, for every 3 users that you invite to this platform where I could track that they've been on the platform for at least an hour, I'll give you 2 weeks free to the sport betting site, right? But so being able to use the sports site as a marketing tool for other things that I have going on, really, but in order to do that, you have to get that platform initially. So to get that platform, that's where I'm really going hands-on with social media right now. But over time, right, 200 turns to 500, 500 turns to 1,000, 1,000 turns to 5,000. It will keep on growing quick. But in order to get that initial base, I'm kind of full deck with social media, and hopefully over time letting word of mouth take over.
Okay, bet. And I mean, the Twitter obviously is speaking for itself already. You're doing the right thing. I feel like this is something that everybody is talking about, and with sports kind of being, we about to get, well, by the time y'all hear this episode, we may be well into it. But as of October 3rd, with today, we about to have 55 days straight of football between college and the
No,
NFL.
exactly.
You know, people are talking, people are going. That's 55 days is wild, but I love it. But you know, MLB, by the way, it's a red October, y'all. Shout out to my Phillies. But it's so much that's happening, so much that's going on, so many moving pieces and moving parts. So I love that. Now, to take it a step further, what do you February? You've touched on February a little bit, and I don't want to spoil too much or reveal too much.
Yeah.
By the time February is here, even if you want to take it a little bit further than that, what can people expect moving forward? You know, and I ask this question because, as I said, we're going to have people that they're hearing this episode live, they're going to tap in. We're having people, once it's aired, that they're going to tap in and meet you at different stages and places.
Yeah.
So as people begin to embark on this, as people begin to get interested in this and want to sign up and want to use it and want to, predict, make money and things like that, what can people expect moving forward? What are some of the things that you're just kind of trying to embark on or trying to expose or trying to bring to this platform?
Absolutely. So it's two things I'm working on, and one's the Sportbet application, which is fully live in production. Sportbetdata.ai. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned the full URL, but it's a web application. Sportbetdata.ai. Please check it out. Reach out on Twitter for a free promo code if you want to just try it out before you used it, right? But the other application I'm working on is called Smack, and building it without really talking about too much. It started off as a shit talking app, but I can't say shit talking for an app. I can't just say shit. So I said, all right, how do I call it Smack? Right, where it's pretty much smack talk. And behind it was the concept of, I wanted to build something where I was like, what makes a tech idea big? And I started thinking about industry disruptions, right? So, Airbnb with hotels, Uber with the taxi industry, Spotify with music, and you could keep naming it. But really, what markets need to be brought to technology? And I thought about it from the live event space, right? So if I'm watching the Mets versus the Phillies, if I need to find another tomorrow, what do I need to do right now? If I don't know you, I got to go to the sports bar to do it, right? And I wanted to bring that platform where instead of having to go to that physical space, I could bring that physical space to you. So very similar to like the chat roulettes and the Omegles back in the day, but really like having it tailored towards live events. And I thought about it with sports initially, where it could be a sporting event, but it could be the political election, right? It could be anything. So really being able to like bridge that gap between, I guess you could say, adult loneliness and like how do you make friends as an adult, all of that, and saying how do I bring people a common interest, whether it's watching Love Is Blind, or whether it's watching the Mets versus the Phillies or the Patriots versus the Steelers, whatever the case is. I can say I'm a Steeler fan trying to talk to other Steeler fans, or I'm a Steeler fan trying to trash talk Patriot fans, and based off my preferences, while that live event is going on, it's going to match me with that person. So that's something that I got going on in the future. But in building that, that's as I mentioned, what I consider $1 million billion idea. And me doing that, I didn't want to execute that and not execute it properly. And then what ends up happening is the idea is really out there where they saw how I executed it. They saw how everything worked end to end, but I didn't do everything properly. And now the idea is out there. It's kind of like Black Planet, I think it was, before Facebook and MySpace, and somebody just takes over it and makes it what it really should be, right? So that's why I said, all right, I'm going to build something out first just to get all the kinks out, because once I release the bigger idea, I'm really not going to have room for mistakes there. So, but that's something that I'm working on for the long term. And I feel very comfortable from the technology side. Of course, I'm going to need investors in the long term, which is why I'm building out not only that platform, but the sport app, where I can say, here's what I built. Here's the traction behind it. Here's the amount of users that I'm gaining over time. Here's where I see myself projected at. And here's where I see myself projected at in 2 years, if you also see the same vision as me, and really just grinding towards it. But in order to make Smack popular, I need to have the platform to market a Smack, right? Because I don't have the money for advertising. Until I get the money for advertising, then it might be different. But I don't want it to be where I'm so reliant on saying, if I don't get an investor, it's all game over. So I'm trying to, of course, that's the best plan. But even if not, I feel like I'm taking all the steps along the way where if I don't, I still will have the technology built. I still will have some platform I can market to. And over time, it will be what it needs to be. Of course, somebody else can expedite it. But if not, I don't want to be just sitting on my hands hoping that somebody brings me there. So
yeah, man. And I love that you've become so hyper independent with this, and I think a lot of that too is it just speaks to your skill set. You don't really have to outsource. You don't really have to wait on others. You're not really having to go back and forth. And I think that even makes the productivity just a bit better. And it gives you that time as well. Oftentimes when you got to wait on somebody or you're waiting on an email or a form or something to get approved or signed, it can be just that process of like, wow, all right, I could be doing this instead, or this is kind of holding up this, or without this, I can't get to that. But when you kind of have everything and are able to keep as much in-house as possible for everything that you're trying to do, it's amazing. And it even goes to show too that you're still even thinking that forward thinking, that forward progress, that I know that in order for this to reach the height that I wanted to reach, that I'm gonna have to make sure that I have something to set that foundation, that I have something to kind of back up and rely on. But I'll also have to make sure that that platform, if I'm pushing that out to the public, if I'm making it this big thing as I want it to be and as it is, then this thing has to be rock solid, because people are quick to point out what's the thing would be amazing end to end, as you said. But that one little thing, or the one time something don't load, or the one time something error,
it's why I don't support these businesses.
That's why I can't do this no more. Yeah, it's all that, it's so crazy to hear that. Got you. So from the beginning of this episode until now, I really feel like we've gone on a journey in a sense. We've looked at kind of what you were thinking, what the passion was, what the expectations that were placed on you, kind of where you started, where you kind of had to pivot and go through, and then kind of where you ended up after that. So for people similar to yourself that may have a passion in something, and not necessarily sports, but just have the love for something, but also are trying to navigate within that IT space. You even spoke to about, the job hunt process and how that can be, and just how you have to kind of tailor yourself, and even some of the sacrifices that you had to make along the way. What advice or insight do you have to somebody trying to find their way within this space, within the IT industry, within kind of just getting into everything that's going on, especially with everything at our disposal right now, as we spoke about the AI, as we spoke about a lot of people not necessarily needing like a direct person or somebody sitting in an office or sitting in a chair, but they can automate a lot. So for somebody really kind of lost along that journey, or not necessarily knowing where they want to end up or what they want to do, but know what they love, how can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is learning how to say no to people, and I'll explain what I mean to that. So all advice isn't good advice. If I listened to some advice, I wouldn't be in computer science today. So, and in high school, there was two things I'm glad I didn't listen to. One was, do you really want to do math your whole life? Right? I don't want to join IT. I don't want to be in computer science. If I do that, you got to be great at math. And I was good at math actually, but IT, computer science is nothing unless I'm building a calculus application, unless I'm building, an application that involves physics, which is really more real world. There's nothing. What I'm building is statistic based, so of course I still need to understand math at that degree. But there's a lot of applications. If I was building a hairstylist application, what do I need to know math for? Right? Everything about it is really a storyline. If I was writing a movie script, if I was writing a song, if I was writing an essay, if I'm coding a script, whatever the case is, how does everything piece together? And that's if you have that fundamental skill and you wanted to try programming, I would say don't run away from it, because there's nothing else besides that I think you truly need to understand to say, all right, how can I piece something together and eventually make it a full software, right? So that's the first piece of advice for IT. But second, text, whether it's boot camp, whether it's a computer science degree, it's not cheap. I got blessed, which I guess is a whole different story outside of this podcast, of like how I got my money from Syracuse. But depending who you ask, right? Like loans is scary, right? Depending on how much you're taking out. But I guess the question is, would you rather be in a situation where you felt I didn't take any loans out, but I kind of sacrificed what I really wanted to do in my future that could have brought me this type of lifestyle? Or would I rather really grind through and just, I got to pay these loans off, but no one is going to fight off in the long term. So it might sound crazy, but I will say really to not let debt scare you, as long as you have a vision ahead of what you're trying to accomplish. And then that's really the main thing with IT. Other than that, you have to love it. As if I play basketball, I was playing basketball in high school, minimum 6 hours a day, really. That I would say that's the grind you have to have with IT. And if you have an IT job, of course, you're programming eight hours a day. But getting into it, you have to have that same passion of, how do I really love this the way I love just going to the bowling alley, the way I love playing basketball? Like if it's something you really want to get into, you have to love it. Or even if you don't love it, you have to like it where it's not like, where it's like, for programming for me, for example, I can't program for something I don't have a passion towards, right? So for my jobs, it was paying me, so I had a passion to get my paycheck, right? But like, if other than that, you think I'm gonna program for mass tort litigation? That just seems like something that's not under my realm. But doing it for sports is something I thoroughly enjoy doing. And so really just saying, how can I join this field, but how can I apply it to something that I really like doing? That way you really get that interest really quick.
We're going to throw everybody off and just name this episode Mass Tort Litigation, and nobody's going to know what's going on. And then you're going to read the bio. You're going to be like, wait, hold on. What? So, nah, bro, I love the touch on the debt part, because I'm in debt. You know, I went to Syracuse, and I tell people that I spent 4 years at an institution in North Carolina, and I spent 13 years at a private institution in upstate New York, and I owe them more. I owe them double what I owe my undergrad institution. It's crazy, you know. But one of my biggest quotes, and something that I said when I accepted the Syracuse offer was, "You never let money stop you from an opportunity. You never let that take you." Because had I not went to Syracuse, who knows what I'd be doing right now, where I'd be or what I'd be. But do I regret any part of that? No, because why? I took advantage of every single cent that they took out. Oh, I made sure I was everywhere. I was always in Shine, at Newhouse. I was everywhere. I needed to go. But, I feel like regrets come from when we could have done more, or we should have done more.
Exactly.
And we didn't, but I felt like, man, aside from that weather, I gave it all I had, man. I really did. So I love that, in that same respect, that you can offer that to those people as well, because sometimes, money plays a big factor in decision making and career path choices and everything like that. So I definitely do understand that, most definitely. So before we close out, before we tell people where to tap in, which I know you shared the app, but we always kind of end with the call to action at the end. But before we get to that, do you feel like there's anything that we have not touched on today that you want to leave the people, whether it may even be some last words for them out there, whether it may even be some inspiration or some motivation, whether it may even be giving some people something to look for? Do you feel like there's anything you got left for us?
Just remember, anybody behind any business you're supporting, there's always a person behind it, right? So really just taking that into account. I see everything that comes towards my page. I actually had some negative feedback when I first started, right? I made one data mistake, actually. I was writing a write-up where everything is automated in the background, but but my write-ups that I do, I do my own research, and I'll say, okay, here's exactly why my prediction said it this way. And I wrote something, and let's just say 7 out of 8 sentences were correct, and then like half of one sentence had some incorrect data. And somebody that didn't even follow me wrote, "This is why you only got 70 followers, right? This is just bad data." And it's just, but I took that actually as a thank you, as motivation, right? So really, you're going to have a lot of people that support you. You're going to have a lot of people that bring negative energy away. I always say, take the negative energy and turn it into fuel, right? Don't let people sidetrack you. But say, all right, they're right. I messed up on that. How do I make sure that doesn't happen again? So really just trying to always be the best version of yourself, whether it's good, and if it's a bad thing that's taking place, don't let it bring you down. Just say, okay, how do I learn from that and always be the better person at the end of the day? So really just remain true to yourself, be the best version you could be, and things will fall into place,
Hey, don't be surprised, y'all, if y'all see that the application is launching its own podcast like in 2 years from now, because Brian got just so many gems to drop. But I definitely agree with that. As we spoke to, you're never going to please everybody. Everybody is never going to be just 100% just all in on that. But how do you allow that or do you even allow that to impact you? And if you do allow it to impact you, do you let it take you off your game, or do you say, okay, you just give that Cam Newton nod and just walk down?
Exactly. All right. Yeah.
I can watch that 70 turn to 15,000.
Exactly.
So, all right. The last thing that we always do here is we just give people the places and the spaces where they can tap in with you. So for everybody just looking to, one follow along the journey, connect with you, whether it be social media, websites, applications, everything like that. What are the best places to find you? What are the best places to check everything out and start implementing some data? Give us everything you got.
Absolutely. So SportBet Data on Twitter, that's where I have the most traction, is where I post the most. I also have an Instagram page, which is also SportBet Data. I'll post more in the future on that page, but that doesn't have the most traction. Just from me on a personal level, you can reach out on LinkedIn. One of the biggest things about me actually is I love to help people out, one that look like me or feel like they need somebody like me to teach them. So just to get off topic, well, really not off topic, I had troubles actually learning computer science just because how I was being taught, right? Because you have people from different backgrounds where even though the information is the same, they don't know how to convey information to you. I want to be that resource to people that look like me, where it's like, I want to get into technology, but I don't know where to start. And I try to watch some YouTube videos, but I don't understand it, right? I'm here as a resource. Add me on LinkedIn, Brian Cash. You can see my name right here, how it's spelled. But yeah, I'll love to talk to anybody. One of the biggest things about me actually is breaking stereotypes and helping people really merge into spaces. So the reason why I wear my hair out is because I don't want to really fit the mold, but I want to really reinvent the mold, right? So I'm the person that walks around with jeans, sneakers, and my hair out in the office, but still goes in and does my job well. And I kind of want that to be the reputation for anybody else that looks like me. So don't be afraid to reach out. I'd love to be a resource.
And I can attest to that firsthand. Y'all, I really feel like it may just be a Kappa chapter thing. And nothing again. I love my Upsilon Zeta, but we gotta do a little bit better with the. I feel like my chapter is very hospitable. I ain't about to do that. It's almost homecoming season. But no, and it's Brian with a Y, y'all. For my people who are my audio listeners and everything like that, is BRY, not BRI. So just to make that slight. But no, from how we were able to get acquainted, the brothers are just interesting people. But, as I really got to know him, as I really got to know a lot of the other brothers within the chapter, I really saw that where we were, and I really saw how we just resonated with one another. How, when you get into those spaces where people really look like you, and we can have conversations beyond just sports, beyond just music, beyond just, the day-to-day, we can really talk about generational things. We can really talk about wealth, and we can really talk about success and data analytics and everything like that. Cash is about his business for sure. He's posted a lot of things that I can't necessarily understand or explain, but I know he's working and I know he's doing what he got to do for sure. So obviously, from been a supporter since day one, been definitely an advocate for it, but from down to business to sports-led data, man, we are here to support. We are here to do whatever we can to make sure that everything is everything, and that, by the end of this year, by next year, by February, that we're exactly where we need to be. That Smack is taking off, that is doing what it needs to do. So thank you, my brother, for joining us today. I definitely do appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, bro. I appreciate you coming on here and really just dropping some gems. We had some people even on the IG live showing you some love. Data Dog, I got Money Monsieur, I got Face and Nas. So we had some people.
Shout out to Data Dog. He's gonna change the world. I was a supervisor on my last job.
All right, so he gonna make it shake and make it. But we're gonna get him on here just the same. But to everybody who taps in, whether you joined us live, whether you hear this at a later date, whether you support us at some form or fashion in the near future, I appreciate y'all. I love y'all, man. This has been another episode of the Down to Business podcast here with Tamar Turner. All right, so.